really work? everyone, and welcome to the ASME's A Day in the Life webinar series brought to you by Engineers for Engineers. I'm Rani Haroun and your host for today's webinar. I hope you can all hear me okay. If you don't, please put something in the chat box and let me know. For those that are attending our event for the first time, what is the purpose of this webinar and what's a Day in the Life webinar series all about? You probably wonder at some point what a day in the life of a mechanical engineer working at top companies would be like. Now you have the chance to find out through this interactive webinar series. In a minute or so, I want to introduce our special guest speaker of today's webinar. But first, let me tell you how this webinar will work. Starting with some housekeeping, all webinar participants are signed in listen mode only. So please type in any questions you might have in the chat box anytime during the webinar. All questions will be answered after the introduction of our guest speaker. In fact, the Q&A session will be an integral part of this webinar. You may ask any kind of questions, whether it's related to the mechanical engineering field, the company, the industry, career-related questions, or any question related to the speaker's job or position. So for those who are not familiar with how YouTube Live works, this is where you can type in your questions. Simply type them into the chat box in your YouTube control panel as shown here. We'll probably get a lot of questions, so we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. So let's get started and introduce you to our guest speaker. So please meet Melissa Douglas, a mechanical engineer at Microsoft. Melissa, thank you so much for being with us today. We are very excited to have you with us. And can we start with you introducing yourself and telling us your story? So I'm going to, if you can just unmute yourself, Melissa, and enable your video so we can all see you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we just need to, if you can just start your video.
All right.
There we go. Thank you, Melissa. So again, thank you so much for being with us today. We're very excited to have you. So please, at this time, if you can just give us your little intro and telling us your story.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here as well. So as was said, my name is Melissa. I have been working at Microsoft as a mechanical engineer since summer of last year. I mainly focus on metrology for the Surface laptops at the company. I graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering from Howard University in May 2020 in the midst of all the COVID relocations and transition to online school, etc. I'm working almost fully remote now. Before I graduated, I did intern at Microsoft in the summer before my senior year. Before that, I had internships at Autodesk, Cummins, Rum Factory in Barbados, and as a quality assurance engineer at a paint company in Jamaica. I am an international student. I was born and raised in Jamaica, so I definitely understand the struggles of being a mechanical engineer in America, just ramping up with cultural and just the struggles that come with being an international student. Yes, as I said, I'm really happy to be here. I hope that I'm able to say something that's helpful to you in your professional journey. Everything that I say is, of course, my opinion. I'm not representing Microsoft's opinions or anything. So I am looking forward to your questions and being of help.
Okay, thank you so much, Melissa. So how about I'm going to start since I don't see any questions from the audience yet. How about you tell us about your typical day at Microsoft? What is it? What is it like?
Gotcha. So a typical day for me, since I've started while working remote, might be very different from a typical day before this. But as as we work from home, a lot of my work surrounds figuring out how to measure the things that we see and the things that affect the user experience as they touch and look at their laptop for the first time. So you're thinking about the quality of the color, the texture, the gloss, how it feels, the anti-fingerprinting performance, etc. These things all have metrics that we can measure coming off the factory line. And a lot of the time, we can't necessarily correlate how it looks visually to a specific number. So my job surrounds figuring out how that works. So I'm setting up experiments. I'm building out test fixtures with my 3D printer, and I have a range of instruments in my home that I use to measure and record data that can be used to tighten up our process, ensure quality for our customers, etc. Each day does look a little different because the issues do vary. Sometimes we're seeing new things that are coming off the line. Sometimes it's an old issue that we have some information about, but we just want to get a little bit more data on and understanding of. And there's also a lot of networking as a new person in Microsoft. There are lots of interesting people to talk to, a lot of organizations like BAM, Blacks at Microsoft, the Jamaicans that are there, the Caribbean people, and arranging like volunteer events for employees and other people to engage with the community. That's been a big part of what I've chosen to do with my time, etc. It does vary and it's changing as I learn more about my role, and it's always exciting.
Thanks, Melissa. What do you like the most about your job?
I think one of the things I like the most is the ability to just be a part of problem solving in a variety of fields. It's never the same issue every day that's just repetitive. It's always something different. It's always something that requires a completely different solution, a different set of skills that I have to keep sharp every day. And I would rather be challenged than bored, essentially. And I am consistently challenged in my role. I also like the culture. I like being able to talk to people from different backgrounds and get a variety of different ideas and solutions for the things that I'm working on. So those are my favorite things.
Okay, great. And so you like being challenged, and so what do you find right now the most challenging? What keeps you excited and wanting to work even extra hours every day at Microsoft?
I think the thing that is currently keeping me challenged is, as I mentioned, the variety of skills that I have to build and hone to come to solutions. So for example, I've recently taken a course on color, how that's measured, how that's controlled, how that's affected by the different conditions around you, and applying that knowledge immediately to get results. I think of it kind of as a mix of industry and research, in that there aren't just solutions out there that you can pluck and apply, but there's information and converting textbook information to real life applications and solutions for a customer is something that I'm really excited about. It's always, I enjoy finding out things that other people, whether in my company or in the field in general, don't know. It's really interesting, especially when it's like it fails at first, essentially. There's a lot of things that, you know, you say, this feels like a logical conclusion um, from condition to something that we'd see on a part, and it does not work. And you just have to go back to the drawing board and continue thinking about it, looking at new data. Yeah, hopefully that answers the question a bit.
Yes, that's very good. Thank you, Melissa. So it looks like I was looking at our YouTube panel, and it looks like we're not getting any questions, so we may have an issue there. So for those who are listening, if you're having issues typing in questions, I have someone who's looking into that right now. So hopefully we'll re-enable that really soon. In the meantime, let me just continue with some of the questions we often get from the audience, Melissa. So still focusing on your experience, if you can tell us an example of a project that you have been the most proud of so far. I know you haven't been with Microsoft that long, but just again to give an idea to our audience of the type of projects you're working on, and something that has been very exciting for you.
Okay. Seeing that the projects often go very long, there's not necessarily a fully completed one that I can say is on the list, but a small thing that I was very proud of because it worked is, so one of the things that I'm studying is the surface energy of our parts. And that is important because it determines how the coatings, whether that's paints or surface finishes, rest and stay on the surface of the metal. I was studying the surface energy, and I was seeing a lot of fluctuation in my data, and I knew that that wasn't as a result of anything that I was aware of. I had no clue, but I had a theory about how the cleaning of the part or how the parts were prepared was varying my results. And I was able to set up within a short space of time just my hypothesis and control, etc. And the data just immediately confirmed that the way that the parts were being dried, but with pressurized air, was, I think, knocking off electrons and disrupting the way that water and oil rested on the surface. It's a very niche project, and it's probably something that, you know, isn't directly impacting a particular like a surface laptop immediately, but it was something that I set out to understand, and I was able to do it and get results that made sense. And that's going to impact the way that I work, which will make a difference in the future, if that makes sense.
Yes, Melissa, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. So next question. What do you think you would be doing if you didn't work for Microsoft or in the field, in the mechanical engineering field?
Okay. Well, if I weren't working for Microsoft, I can answer that first. I think I'd have wanted to perhaps go into education or something along that line. My previous job at Autodesk had me essentially teaching my peers how to use the software and how to carry out their projects and their ideas efficiently and effectively. And just having that engagement with other students or other interested persons and teaching them something that I knew well and enjoyed was really nice. I also feel like, you know, in between mechanical engineering, I'd want to go into recruiting. I think that being able to talk to the future of a company and identify their skill sets and coach them on how to uh, present themselves in a way that works is something that I've enjoyed doing with friends and persons who've reached out on LinkedIn, pairs, etc. So if not mechanical engineering, I would I would also want to do recruiting. I don't know if I'd leave mechanical engineering just yet. I really do enjoy the field. I like the problem solving and just playing with different instruments and getting answers to questions and such. But if not only mechanical engineering, something related to outreach and people.
Okay, thank you. What ways do you think you could still improve on your career? I know that you haven't been that long for Microsoft, but what are the things that you are working on, I would say, this year and then in the next couple of years that you want to focus on and improve specifically in your career?
Um, at this point, a lot. There's a lot of things that I think I look at my mentors, I look at other persons in the company, and I'm identifying skills that I want to be able to build in the future. I think, well, this is a part of it. I want to build my public speaking and presentation skills. So that's one of the things I'd like to do. I also want to increase my appreciation of the real world almost. You know, fresh out of college, you have a lot of book knowledge and perhaps not as much understanding of the how the process of how things are made, or you know how how much things cost or what design features will ramp up the production time or anything. I just want to have a more solid understanding of the real world as an engineer and how to make things happen. Um, I also think there are technical skills that I want to be better at. I'm working on my FE. That's not really a skill, but that's something I'm doing. I also want to improve like my statistics, how being able to understand data more efficiently and get good results from it. Overall, there's a lot of things I'd like to be able to do that I'm not able to do right now in the next couple years.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Um, what is the work-life balance like at Microsoft?
Okay, this varies, I think, per team, per project, per cycle in the project. Um, I am sort of fortunate in that I'm in the company at a time where you're not traveling to China to see the line as often as you would. Um, and you're at home, so the pockets of time in the day that you can take, you're allowed to take, um, instead of just like being at work and then coming home for late night meetings. It From what I've seen, people do respect people and their personal time. There's definitely a lot of times where I've heard of people working several hours more than the expected 40 to get something done. And I've been in that position a couple of times since I've started. Um, but while at home, it's definitely understandable that if you don't have a meeting, you can take some time. And I know a lot of people have kids in the office, so be with their kids or, decompress. I think that what I've seen is that each individual is responsible for how they manage their time and how they um, manage themselves. The the more the more you give, I think, is the more that's expected. So setting up boundaries in your professional life and in your personal life are always good things to do. For example, some people will just refuse to take meetings at a certain time because it's their designated focus time that they can actually spend on the projects that they're working on instead of just being in unnecessary meetings all the time. So to summarize my answer, work-life balance is good if you're intentional about it being good. And my coworkers have shown myself and other coworkers respect for their personal time and mental health. So
Great. Thank you, Melissa. So it looks like the issue with YouTube seems to be resolved. I can all see your questions now. So, and I see already a lot of questions from the YouTube chat. So starting with a very good question from Katie here. The interview process at Microsoft, what is it like?
okay, I interviewed as an intern. So, and then I got converted to full time. So I haven't interviewed as a full time employee, but I know about it. So if that's what you're looking for, I can touch into that a little bit more. But in my experience, um, you start with your first round interviews after being selected from your online application. And this is mostly behavioral. This happened on my campus at Howard University in my junior year. It was about 45 minutes long. And although it was behavioral, there were some technical questions that related to mechanical engineering courses and projects that I had previously done. To prepare for that, I essentially familiarized myself with my resume, the projects, the mechanical engineering principles that support those, and was I made sure that I was familiar with the company of Microsoft. Fortunately, I was pretty passionate about being a part of the company, so I just know things about it. I know current affairs, some of the values. Just make sure that you brush up on that. After being selected to pass the first round interview, I was sent to Redmond for what's called Super Day. Essentially, all the engineers in hardware, so electrical, mechanical, and project managers, we have 4 rounds of interviews, 45 minutes each. And we go on a tour of Microsoft. We can see the company and how people work, the headquarters, etc. That was a lot more technical. I think each of the persons that interviewed me asked me to explain some principle or asked how I would how I would respond to a certain issue. They do ask about what your interests are and try to align you with the team that would best fit your skills and interests. So that's definitely something to be talking to your interviewers about. And I actually really enjoyed those interviews. Everybody that I spoke to that day was awesome. I was laughing with my interviewers while talking about mechanical engineering, and that's when I knew that I really wanted to be at this company. So hopefully that helps.
That's great. Yeah, thank you, Melissa. That's very helpful. Question from Alejandro. So being that Microsoft is a large company, how has your experience been with interdepartmental collaborations? Is it easy to reach out to get support from other departments?
Um, so Microsoft being a large company and me being at home, I think is the hardest part for me. it's definitely easier to walk to another building with a mentor or manager or someone and be introduced to the key participants that you'd often be working with. But just being able to message them on Teams and reach out makes it a little less personal, but everyone's an equal distance away. Um, there's a there's a one Microsoft culture that's really being enforced in that it used to be, I'm hearing, that each division of Microsoft would operate as a single business unit and almost compete with each other. But now it's a lot easier to collaborate and be a part of other conversations. One big thing that's driving that is something that's called culture of learning within Microsoft. Essentially, teams will present on their findings, their lessons learned, and make that available to people that aren't necessarily working with them. So that makes learning from another team's mistakes or successes a lot easier than it would have if we were just each in our own cubicles, staring down and only interacting with people around us. So from my experience, even though I'm at home and I can't get the full thing, people work together nicely between different organizations and groups. So
Great. What skills do you most often use that you gain from your college courses?
okay. I think the skill that I often use is CAD and 3D printing. I often have to build out fixtures for the things that I'm testing. Statistics, sorry, is also a big part of my everyday role. But I think that from college, really, I think the research that I did on campus was more helpful than some of the courses in that I have to be able to focus in on a topic that I might not come in knowing everything about. Um, Literature reviews, understanding and setting out to get meaningful information. That's not a course per se, but honestly, they say that college teaches you how to learn, and I've found that very true in my experience at Microsoft. Not to say that, the degree didn't relate to my role, but a lot of it is learning on the role as well, and being able to be flexible and contribute and learn, etc.
How much of your work day do you spend learning, researching to solve problems?
Um, I would say I'm learning something new for a day out of every 2 weeks, like compressed. Um, I often meet with the suppliers that provide the instruments that I'm working with and, go through how best to get the data. I think that um, doing courses as well sometimes is my entire day or entire couple days for a while. Um, so I think about, I guess it wouldn't be 20%, but I, it decreased as I got more familiar with what I was doing. So yeah.
That's fine. Thank you, Melissa. How was the, so very good question about how you landed your internship. So if you can talk us through the process, is there anything specific that you can recommend to your audience here who
Okay.
would want to start also as an intern first?
So I think that the tips that I would give for people trying to land internships is apply early, apply as soon as the applications come out. And if you can attend a conference or a career fair on campus or an adjacent campus, that will allow you to meet individuals that are recruiting. Definitely go and do that. I was fortunate to be able to meet with people who work at Microsoft and were looking for new interns on my campus. It was actually almost, it was very fortunate how I was able to meet them. They wanted to meet with the presidents of organizations that were active on campus. So I was vice president at the time of ASME on campus and Tau Beta Pi, the honor society, and both of my presidents were unable to make it, so I represented those. So definitely be a part of leadership on campus. I think it's a great way to get yourself out there. If you don't find someone recruiting at your school, go to the conferences that they're at. I know that it can be expensive, especially for a student, but it's a really good investment if you're able to meet different individuals. I also think that as a mechanical engineer, having a portfolio online and a successful or a well documented LinkedIn profile that's engaging is a good way to be seen. I had a recruiter that reached out to me directly on LinkedIn, and I think that with meeting other people in person, I had my resume be seen by the right people, which is sometimes what it comes down to. I know that it does get hard, especially when you're doing the things that you need to do. You're gaining the skills. You're honing your soft skills by being a part of different organizations and groups. But I think that's the first step. Get your resume out there and seen by as many people as you can. And I think that the second thing to do is be able to talk about why you want to be at Microsoft or why you think you're a good fit. Because if you're able to get your foot in the door, those are questions that you want to have thought about before. So just being prepared for an interview on the spot, whether it's formal or informal, once you're in the position, and keep building your skills. I know that as a sophomore or a freshman who wants to be a part of the company in hardware, at least, it can be very difficult, but I know that continued interest is also something that works out well for people. So build your skills, get involved in different things that can up your soft skills, and try as much as possible to get your foot in the door somehow.
Great advice. Thank you, Melissa. So being Microsoft, with Microsoft being a software company and you as a mechanical engineer, is it, how important is programming knowledge necessary for working at Microsoft, or it's not even something that you need, I guess, as a mechanical engineer?
I don't need it with what I do. I know that there are some people who do testing and like program robots that can run a couple cycles, but I don't think it's anything super involved. So you don't need it. If it's a hobby, if it's a passion, it's definitely going to be something that you can implement if you wanted to make your life easier. But don't worry about that too much, I would say.
That makes sense. What made you stand out from others, or what were they looking for in potential employees?
One of the things that I've heard said a lot, whether to me as advice from persons that I reached out to or within the company, is that yes, they're looking for smart people, but being able to work on a team and being able to just be someone who's enjoyable and nice to work with is also something that's highly valued. I think that my Microsoft interviews were one of my best interviews because I was able to click with my interviewer. We were able to discuss things and just be human with each other. And I think that often when I was playing the role of interviewer with my peers and other people, they don't bring their personality to the table. They are clearly smart individuals, and smart individuals are always needed. But a lot of the people who apply are also going to be smart. They're also going to have the qualifications and such. So standing out in an interview is sometimes just being human. Maybe standing out with a recruiter. I've heard sometimes recruiters say that, sometimes you're the only person that treats me as not just a gateway to a job. So be human is step number one. I think number two would be keep learning and keep growing and keep striving for better, like not settling is one thing that's really good. I think that's one of the traits that they look for in persons that they're interviewing. Is that yes, you can get the job done, but are you passionate about getting the job done really well, essentially? And of course, none of these are going to negate the fact that you need to be doing well in school. You need to be getting involved in things outside yourself, whether that's volunteerism or leadership roles. So being well-rounded, I think, would be number three.
Okay. What about in terms of pure, I would say, technical skills?
I think CAD is always a really good skill to be very good at, and if you have your portfolio that shows that, that's always a plus. Statistics is a skill that people underestimate. It definitely does vary a lot by role. I know some people who they also are able to do, as I said, the software side and the electrical side, and that puts them in a great place for their role. But from my experience, CAD and statistics.
Okay. What was the biggest challenge transitioning from college to real life work? What was the most challenging thing for you, Melissa?
So my most challenging thing was not having metrics to know where I stand. Almost in college, you have a midterm exam, you have an end of year exam, and you know based on the rubric that you're provided how far from the mark you are. When something went well, immediately based on the feedback you have with your professor. In work, it's a lot more long term, in that a project can take a year or years even. And with very long projects, the step-by-step goals and deadlines feel a little bit more arbitrary. So having a plan and sticking with it was something that I had to get used to, and essentially making my own deadlines to get things done in a timely manner and prioritize. And understanding how to ask questions of how am I doing, essentially. There are some topics that I'm working with that are a little bit more abstract than others. So doing an experiment, for example, and it's not yielding results isn't necessarily no result. It's another, like, you have to be able to measure, yes, that was still work done, that was still a step in the right direction, even if it didn't yield the expected results. So the lack of particular deadlines and metrics, I think, was the hardest part for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Melissa. So with the just curious, I think we got, I see a lot of questions, yes, related to the environment that you have at Microsoft. And so starting with the teams that you work with, the team, how they are structured. Can you tell us about that a bit more?
Okay. Again, that varies a lot with the company. My particular team is quite small. It's like 5 of us. And we work on pretty different things. So I often work with people from different teams. I don't know, I guess further clarification of what you'd want to know about the teams and the structure would help me kind of answer that question a little better.
Because just, I mean, if you don't know about the other teams, that's okay. I think the question was really, at least that I saw from the chat, was really in terms of I think they were asked from your perspective as a mechanical engineer, the team that you work for now. So you said, I think you said that it's only five people, and the other teams that that you work with. Do you like your team, for example? Does it work with any other team?
Gotcha. We do work closely with other teams. We often work on several projects at a time, so we'd be grouped with other roles. So, for example, project management, sourcing, factory management, people from different roles within the company. So my entire team is engineering based. I don't necessarily work on a project with everyone from my team, but we share information, we share knowledge, and we have social events that are able to bring us together regardless. It I'm sorry for giving this answer for every question, but it really does vary.
Okay, no, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, so what about I would say opportunities to learn, to grow? What kind of opportunities are there at Microsoft and are presented to you specifically as a mechanical engineer?
Mhm. So I think the biggest thing that I was super happy about as a mechanical engineer who wants to be able to learn more about industry and what everyone else knows essentially is the culture of learning that I mentioned before. On a about weekly basis, someone from the team or someone from the mechanical engineering group is presenting on whether it's a skill or a company is coming in and presenting about their manufacturing method, or it really does vary. Perhaps lessons learned from a project that recently closed out, or how customers responded to different features that we built. And it's always something new. And it gives us access to people who work in completely different environments. People are also very friendly. They just tell you if you ask what they're working on and how they got to where they are. I also have been able to attend a few conferences since I started at Microsoft, albeit virtually, but being able to see the industry as a whole. So I did the Society of Women Engineer conference last year, and that was really interesting. And then I attended CES recently, and it does provide a lot of context. So between learning from the organized culture of learning presentations, the conferences, and just one-on-ones with other smart individuals at Microsoft, there are a lot of opportunities for growth, and I plan to take them all.
Oh, okay, good for you. Do you have a question from all of them? Very good question. Is there a formal mentorship like program at Microsoft where you get assigned a mentor when you start, or is it kind of informal and you just learn from basically the person or the engineer who's the most senior to you?
Gotcha. I was assigned a formal mentor. She's great, and she definitely ramped me up on a lot of the things on the team. I also have made a point about getting a variety of mentors, and these are just from natural conversations. Some of them were from organized one-on-one sessions with the employee groups such as Blacks at Microsoft, Women in Engineering, etc. So it puts you in contact and allows you to one-on-one with someone whose role and position and experience you find interesting. So between the formal assignment and opportunities to reach out to other people, yeah, there's both.
Okay. What about a question from Celicia? She's saying, although you're not traveling now, what kind of opportunities are there normally to travel at Microsoft or work abroad for mechanical engineers?
Okay, so as an intern, I was able to go to the factory in China. So that was one of the places that I went to. I know of colleagues going to other countries in Asia, China, Asia, Europe, etc. And I also traveled within the United States to some parts that we have. I think had I not been in quarantine and working from home, I'd have definitely gone to see some of the research that I'm researchers, sorry, that I'm partnering with in other parts of the US. Um, I've also heard of conferences in other countries that people are able to go to. So with the right team and such, a lot mechanical engineers often have to go. I know a lot of people get tired of it after a while. I haven't gotten there yet, but I think there are a few places that you could go.
Okay. Do you, I think you kind of already touched on that a little bit. Do you work more closely with manufacturing, process personnel, or design engineers?
I'm smack in the middle of the two, I think. um, I have been working a lot with the industrial designers recently because of because it's harder to work with the factory now that, well, for me as a new employee, just because we're remote and we have to be having conversations and sending pictures. I'm not often the one that's doing that directly because there are other people with more experience who are bilingual, for example. And as a metrology engineer, or focusing on metrology, I like to essentially check what I'm seeing versus what someone else is seeing to see what the measurements correlating to visually. Um, but I think normally and over time, I will be working with both almost equally.
Okay, great. Thank you, Melissa. We are almost, I think we have another few minutes here before we wrap up. So please, if you have any more questions, please don't hesitate. I think I still have a few questions to go through here on the chat, but not that many. So please don't hesitate. Again, if you have more questions. The one that I think it's Jean-Pierre Sacha had very good question, and it's also a very nice comment. He's saying, "Hi, Melissa, you're a shining example of a successful young engineer. As an exceptional student with extensive experience and qualifications, what advice do you have for current engineering students?" I know that it's kind of a broad questions, so it's kind of broad question, and you kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, but I think it's actually a very good question toward the end of this webinar to kind of recap or summarize the best advice that you have for the engineering students who are listening to us today.
Well, first of all, thank you, Jean-Pierre. I think that my advice to engineering students, and of course this will vary on what kind of engineering students you are, but is definitely get out of your classroom, get out of the thing you have to do for class, and experience more than just classes. Be involved in something that requires you to build different sets of skills, whether that's speaking or organization. Do something that rounds you out as an individual. And of course, you're going to want to get involved in engineering projects as well, perhaps on the side and perhaps as a part of classes, but do something else also. Because as you are able to talk to more individuals, as you're able to understand, I think, people better. You'll become a better, you'll be able to speak in interviews better, for example. You'll be able to understand different solutions that come from different assumptions that different people might have. So get out of your comfort zone, do something that scares you, I guess. And for that, engineering roles aren't just applying what you've learned in the classroom, but they're working with other people. They're thinking about the customer. There's a lot of human in engineering as well, and make sure that you're intentional about experiencing that as well. Second bit of advice I would give is to be self-aware. Look at things that you enjoy and try to figure out why you like them, what you're working towards, because I think an arbitrary goal of working in engineering won't, like, you want to be able to bring the passion that you know you have about a particular specific area. And you can find that when you're being aware of the things that you gravitate towards, for example. So those are, neither of those are engineering advice per se, just general work life advice, but hopefully that helps as well.
Okay, great. Um, is there anything you can share about Microsoft that not many people know?
I think that, well, I think that it's a really great place to work. I think that, it's a lot more collaborative than I expected, for example, and the work is creative, and um, it requires you to think, it requires you to collaborate, and from what I've seen, the culture is amazing. There are lots of opportunities, and I think that it's there's also a lot of room to move around within the company, I've been told. People encourage you to find something that works for you in terms of how you like to work, the kind of team you like to work on. And that's something that I really enjoy. Like, people encourage you to be your best self, even if that means that, they're going to be losing a member of their team, which I think is nice. So I've only have good things to say about the company. If you have another question, you can find me on LinkedIn and ask me. I can't say that I'll answer immediately, but I'll try to get to your extra questions, if anything.
Thank you, Melissa. That's very nice of you. So I don't see any more new questions. Let me just go through the chat very, very quick. Oh, when did you begin focusing on metrology? I don't know if you answered that question as part of your intro. Someone was. Yeah, go ahead.
My internship was focused on metrology. I wasn't particularly doing anything in school that was indicative of, oh, this is what I want to do in my life, but general research and the variety of skills that I had allowed me to be able to focus metrology as an engineer at Microsoft. So.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Melissa. I think at this point, we're going to wrap up. We are approaching the top of the hour anyway, so I hope you all enjoyed this webinar. Let me just share my presentation very quick. Thank you again so much, Melissa.
And thank you for having me. This was great.
No, that was, no, thank you. So if you can, Okay, so just going to wrap up here. So thank you again for participating in today's webinar, and apologize again for the little technical issue that we had at the beginning where I couldn't see your questions. So hopefully I didn't miss any. Thank you all for those who participated. Very, very, very good question. And of course, thank you again, Melissa. It was very, very good. This webinar has been recorded as we did for the other webinar, so it will be available online at www.asme.org in a few days. We have another upcoming webinar at the end of March, the 25th to be exact, and it will be with an engineer from Northrop Grumman. And lastly, in a few minutes, we'll send you a short survey. So if you can please be so kind and give us your feedback so we can bring you speakers and topics that are the most of interest to you in the future. So again, thank you, and we'll see you soon on our next webinar. Bye.
Bye, thank you.